My only job is to call for the first presentation, for the first short presentation, and Chris told me that we have to stick to the time schedule. So please keep your presentation short, and hopefully there will be some discussions and some questions. So Rama, would you just begin?
So I'll talk about service quality. Some of you have seen this parts of the presentation yesterday. Sorry if it is some of it is repeat for you. You can only have so many good ideas at any given point in time. So let's. Do I have a way to move on? Okay. All right. So this is about IT service quality. So first of all, why solution quality or service quality? Why do we care about it? It's pretty clear, quality is important because that's the way to satisfy the existing customers, and that's the way to win new business. And I very specifically take an IT service provider point of view. So low cost strategy or differentiated strategy, whichever it is, you want to focus on service quality in order to achieve the customer satisfaction levels that you want or win future business. You want to win new business, you want to be profitable. So for all of these things, quality is really at the base of it. What are the challenges in achieving quality though? Variations typically is what leads to quality. We all know that if there is only one thing that this company does, then of course you can optimize it to the extent that you can, and everybody is trained around delivering the same service, and all the processes are geared for it, and it's easy to achieve quality in such a setting versus different offerings, different solutions, and different requirements, and every situation is different, and everybody is trying to figure out what's the best way to do it and best way to achieve quality while doing all these, satisfying all these requirements. So these variations are what lead to quality. So in light of these variations, how do we have this consistent set of processes, methods, tools that Chris was talking about, and technology and best practices in order to achieve quality in an IT service solution? That's really the challenge that we're trying to tackle here. And we all know a lot of things have been compared with manufacturing, and we know that IT services are different. That's somewhat experiential in nature, knowledge-based, and that also leads to some of the interesting challenges in quality. And again, I'll go through these quickly. Some of you have already seen this. This is one representation of how an IT services engagement team works, where you're trying to take the requirements from a client and prepare a solution, prepare a presentation, a proposal, and take it to the client and make sure that it follows through with all the guidelines and quality related requirements within the company. And eventually when it gets approved and contract is signed, you have to implement it. So there are lots of agents and people that are involved in the process, and getting all of their perspectives and still trying to achieve quality is a challenge. And in an IT service solution, when you specifically look at the stages, there is the sales process, there is the delivery process, which includes transformation, probably some kind of a transition, and getting into steady state kind of delivery. There are different aspects, activities, and lots of things could go wrong. If what is promised is not what actually ends up being delivered, client won't be happy, and that leads to quality issues. If what has been solutioned or prepared as a proposal is the costs turn out to be much higher during delivery, then that leads to all kinds of issues in terms of being profitable based on a particular deal for an IT service provider. So lots of disconnects can happen at any point in time between various stages of this. And quality is really meant to go in and really understand all of the kinds of things that could go wrong, and have the common and consistent and also from a point of view of feedback loop from what's happening in the past, what happened in the past, how can we learn from these, and so those are some of the things that we are thinking about as well. So some of these things, when we zoom in on achieving services quality, things that come to picture are, how do we measure quality of a solution and of an IT service solution? Do we have good metrics for measuring it? What are the drivers of value? What are the human technological factors? What are the incentives in this for different role players to achieve quality? What kind of collaboration and knowledge management aspects need to be addressed in order to achieve quality and sustain quality? So these are all kinds of things that we all wrestle with as IT services providers. And I'll talk to some of the things that we can do as part of an SRII kind of a forum. Here, these are, and I won't go into all the details, some of these things that have been presented yesterday. There are different factors that influence quality, and here is a starter set of, we started thinking about it and prepared a set of initial set of a few metrics for measuring quality. Quickly running through the list, when you talk about a solution, the first thing you have to think about is, does it really bring any value to the client or not? Does it address their requirements? Does it really improve their current state of business? And next thing is then, is it profitable to us? Is it feasible? Is it viable for us to implement? Is it standards based, or is it risk managed? Is it innovative? How complete is it from the point of view of requirements? So there are different dimensions of measuring quality. There might be more different ways of organizing it, and I've presented some of the models around how to organize these metrics and better understand the impact of these metrics on the overall solution quality. But there could be different approaches for doing this. So this is one kind of point of view. Here is one point of view, again, a reference architecture, if you will, take it that way, on how can an organization achieve quality. It's not just about building some kind of an IT system and doing some analytics and say, now we can achieve quality through this. It's really all parts and all kinds of an organization have to come into the picture, the technology aspects, the human aspects, the organizational aspects, and so on. So, in a complex and large organization, typically there has to be a consistent and global set of standards and processes put in place in order to achieve that level of standardization upon which additional things can be built. Information, if it is distributed all over the place and it's in different kinds of systems that are not accessible to anybody, you cannot really do much. You cannot learn from what's going wrong, what has gone on in the past. There has to be a way to leverage and harness that information. So there's got to be some kind of an information management mechanism put in place. It doesn't have to be a central repository, but it could be some kind of a federated, but there has to be a mechanism for harnessing information and knowledge from the past. And of course, this information will have to be analyzed, and that's where a lot of analytics come into picture to say what happened in the life cycle of these solutions, and what was the outcome of these solutions that were delivered to the client. Was the client happy? Was it a win scenario? Was it a troubled project? Essentially, being able to learn from all of the things that have gone on, and a lot has been said about this social media now, the collaboration and all of those aspects. There are many role players involved in designing, defining, delivering any kind of an IT solution. So all of them need to have a way of sharing their information and knowledge and being able to collaborate. So that's one thing that we believe also should exist when we talk about a quality management system. And of course, then on top of it, there will be different kinds of individual solutions and systems, like different tools for doing different kinds of things. But so this is our first cut point of view on a reference architecture for achieving services quality. So as an SRII forum, different things can be done, defining models, methods, best practices, guidances, case studies, and sharing information on what has worked at an organizational level, incentive level, and also probably some amount of standardization on what kinds of costs and those kinds of things in the future. One has to think about what are the incentives for individual IT services providers to really share their information. So we need to, Freimut and we were talking about it the other day as to, we need to have some kind of a win-win situation here established so everybody can really figure out what's in it for them, for IT services providers to share their intellectual capital or points of view in an open forum. But so let me kind of conclude here by saying, there are this is a very interesting area. This is where a lot of IT service companies wrestle and struggle to really how to satisfy every client's needs, and at the same time, go more towards standards approach in order to achieve the levels of quality and achieve the levels of profitability. So a lot of interesting possibilities and challenges to work on.
So thank you, Rama, for this very, very big picture of service quality. And I think it's a topic with a very broad scope. So quality in solutioning, quality in production, quality in delivery, quality in user satisfaction. There's also value creation for the customer. And you face the challenge to build up a metrics and a sophisticated model, a structured model of measuring quality. So that's a true challenge which you met. So now we come to Charlie.
Yes.
Drivers of changing world of services. It's about technology and future.
Well, yeah, since she was focused on quality, I figured I'd focus on innovation. And because, of course, what's critical about in the services space is that in order to be a leader, you must have followers. So you must articulate to people what's going on and how these changes that are possible are meaningful to them. And one of the things we've heard quite a bit about this past week is about some of these mega trends that are taking place. And this is a list that the colored categories actually come out of Futurist magazine. But some of these we've heard about, like the longer life that people are living today. One of the aspects of that, of course, is that in the healthcare space, everybody will have chronic disease, because if you live long enough, you'll have it. But in the education space, the whole concept of lifelong learning as an opportunity is something that many of the organizations probably haven't thought about before. And so you can see there's a wide variety of these kind of approaches that we need to think about, because what's important when you're talking to people about an innovation, by definition, an innovation has to be at the intersection rather of the business need and the technology capability. So these are some of the business needs that you can easily foresee in the future. And related to that, you have the whole technical drivers. We live in an interesting time right now on the technical side, what I typically call the world of abundance of IT, compared to at least what we've had in the past, where you have essentially unlimited data, where data coming from mobile devices, sensors, it's derived data. The fact that this piece of data arrived shortly before this other piece of data, that is actually interesting and makes it something that somebody needs to look at. We have unlimited connections, where we can take all that data that's out in the field and pull it in to the unlimited computing, which, of course, since we have a cloud group around that and a mobility group, that there's all this computing capability that we can use it in new and different ways. We also have unlimited intellectual property, or applications that we can bring to bear, which is usually shown as if you've got an iPhone or iPad, that I've got an app for that kind of a concept. But there are some things that are fundamentally scarce. Now, they may be scarce to a particular industry, they may be scarce to a particular organization that is consuming a service, but there are some things that are fundamentally scarce, like the human attention span. And we've had quite a bit of discussion this past week about trying to automate normal and focus on the anomalies and allow people to turn those anomalies into opportunities. And that's an example of the kind of thought process that we can have related to these technological shifts that are underway. One of the techniques you can use to begin to think about innovation and how it can be applied is there are a number of standard rules, sort of like Moore's Law, Edholm's Law, those kind of things, that you can apply and you can begin to project. Now, this happens to be some that I pulled together from some standard rules, but even just projecting out 5 years, you see some of these numbers are radically different than what we're used to. Most of our thought processes are actually constrained by our previous successes and how we view the world. So, for example, this past week, we heard that it takes about 1 terabyte to store the human genome. By 2017, there's going to be 7.4 billion people. But it's only going to cost about $41 a terabyte to store that information. So that means for about $180, you could store the genome of every person on the Earth. That's an interesting possibility that we probably, you have to sort of step out of your current paradigm to think about what those kind of possibilities. And there are a number of those that lay ahead. So all I wanted to really state for this audience, this call to action is, particularly like with this organization of SRII, is that we have a group of people here that have these different ideas. We need to listen to them. We need to put in front of them some of these problems that we're having and see if we can come together and bring these third right answers that neither of us could come up with on our own.
Okay. So thank you, Charlie. So we had a look at the business needs, and we had a look at technology push, and a look into the future of services and services technologies. And now we'll have a look at the customer side on marketing and markets. And I welcome Nora.
Hi. I'm going to be talking about optimizing the user experience in terms of IT services. And first thing is that we have the value to the business and we have the value to the customer. And the business value we hear a lot about, it's more tangible, we can get our arms around it, financial analysts like this in terms of trying to justify a new project or service. These are things related such as our costs, the performance, productivity. But there's also the other side of it, and that's the customer value. And these are things that are less tangible. These are things that are harder to get our arms around, but is just as important. These are terms of the satisfaction, the personalization, the customization. And so what the thing is what we need to do is be able to synchronize these two as we offer IT's tools and services and products. And so what we have here is we have a multi-layer thing in two sides. So at the bottom we have a product that could be a tool, that could be an application and such, and then we have the layer of services, the services that we may provide with that. And then finally, the layer of these intangible qualities. This could be the emotion or excitement that maybe we'll get, the happiness. That could also be just what they derive of, wanting to, those warm, I guess, for lack of a better term, those warm, fuzzy things. So you got from the customer side of it. And so the thing is on the left side is the producer or the provider of that. And it tends to be, of course there's cases, this is not universally true, but there's a tendency to have more of a focus on that product, that tool that's being provided, the features, the footprint, the bells and whistles. And then on top of that, maybe second in importance tends to be the services that may be offered with that. And then less of the time and emphasis is placed on those intangible products, the things that they're the results, the satisfaction that the customer may have with that, and also even bringing the customer to the table. Whereas the customer is looking things from more of a top-down view. There are certain things there that bring them, that want them to even get to use that particular product. It could be a previous knowledge from that company or your use of your IT department. And then the particular services that are offered, and then finally, the less of the emphasis is in the product. So we have to do is realize that there is this dissonance there, and what to do to meld that and bring it together. And then the title of this is a quote that really hit home to me one time as we were going through some efficiency measures. And when we're getting some customer feedback, one of the things is that they said, your IT efficiencies are creating customer inefficiencies. And this was actually with our design and engineering environment. So as it's going through there, these are just some things to consider. There's no one answer to any of these. It depends on the situation, the company, and whatever. So some things is, are you going to outsource versus doing it in-house? And out of the box is lower cost. But maybe some customized code may make it more applicable to that customer and give them a better use of that tool. Are you going to staff 24/7 or just cover the business hours? Is it going to be one size fits all, meaning you're going to offer that same thing across the board, across your entire company? Or is there a need to maybe have it customized a bit to increase the productivity of the customer? Are you going to offer things decentralized environment or centralized? And so there are trade-offs in all of these between the productivity and efficiency of the company versus the satisfaction that your customer is going to have. Another very important thing in terms of the user experience is a closed loop engagement. This could be in terms of IT services in terms of support. It also could be as you're developing software. It could be in terms of getting the requirements gathering process and developing that tool. So the thing is that either meeting with a customer, that could be in terms of getting some feedback on the service, or in terms of software development, maybe meeting with them to get some of their initial requirements. It's very important, I think, to bring the customer directly involved and to the table when you're making these design decisions, and not just indirectly or after the fact. You're getting your customer feedback, whether form of it could be from a survey, it could be whatever. And then do some sort of recording in terms of maybe if you're looking into what issues they may have, or support could be an issues database. And in terms of application development could be your story, your user story. Getting them back to the customer, giving them back some kind of reporting, an acknowledgement that they received this information, and getting confirmation that what you understood is what the customer is intending. So the thing is that where I applied this is that at Intel, I was managing a total customer engagement, or TCE program, in the design environment. And what they would do is quarterly, they would have like account managers within IT. So there'd be people, either a physical or virtual table on a quarterly basis, sitting down with that customer, and would have a standard list of 5 questions. And the reason for those 5 questions was to get some kind of baseline and trending. We asked those same 5 questions to all the business units. And that was mainly to see how we were improving from quarter to quarter. We did put some numerical data to that. But what I really found was the best thing is to actually ask them and get what was behind those values. If they felt we weren't being proactive enough, what exactly did they mean? So it wasn't just a typical survey where you just get a bunch of numerical results. So I figured the best part of it was getting all those tidbits of information, which we could then trend, record in a database, and not just leave it there, but then assign owners, make them accountable, and see what could be done, and then get back to the customer. Now, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden we had a solution for everything. Sometimes there would be a technical reason why we could not do that. Or it could be a business reason why we couldn't do it then, but maybe 6 months from now. But the thing was getting back to them and getting that confirmation from the customer. And so this is just some things here. This is just the numerical training that we did for those 5 questions. We had some things on profession, how professional the people were, proactive, quality, communications, and satisfaction. And some with some trending just from quarter to quarter. We had graphs in terms of the percentage of people that answered things, excellent, good, fair, and poor. So these were mainly, for management, so we can do trending information. It wasn't the absolute scores that were so important as from quarter to quarter, how we were going up or down. And then finally, this is what I was talking about, that we glean some of those key trends in these various areas, and then these would actually go into a database. So this is just in PowerPoint format, and then go off and actually do something about them. Because that's very important, because how many surveys do you do with IT services, and then you might get something back saying 80% answered this, 20% answered that, but you don't really see the results of your input. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nora. So just to sum up until now a little bit, if you have a look at the postings of SIEQ here on this side of the room, you will find a very nice picture, a very nice slide showing 3 pillars of service innovation, engineering, quality, and 1 pillar is depicting the business needs, so in terms of business models, business processes, market analysis. It's about efficiency, productivity, and making money and saving money. And the second pillar is dedicated to the customer point of view. So it's about customer satisfaction, as we just heard, and also Rama addressed. Customer satisfaction, value creation for the customer, co-creation of provider and consumer. And the third pillar is technology. And this is the main topic of the SIEQ cross-enterprise collaboration. And I'm very happy that we can welcome Alex in our team.
Thank you.
And enhancing our SIEQ SIEQ by collaboration issues.
Yes, indeed. And the slides I'm going to show you I already showed on Tuesday. However, this time I would like to use the slides once again after a week of gathering impressions here at the SRII, and also listening to the other presentations for me to maybe point out a bit how the CEC link, the CEC SIEQ is the glue between a lot of other SIEQs. In that line, of course, it would be very good if you heavily get involved in CEC, and we can extend the team even further, even now after joining right. So the one slide I want to show you is basically this one, if I have only one available to show. And it essentially gives an overview of the impact that service-oriented cloud computing has with respect to how collaboration, cross-enterprise collaboration will transform. We have on the left side at the top the status quo organization. It's a typical organigram with silos, and there's kind of a command and control pyramid on top. And this is very challenging for the value chains, because the value chains basically get chopped up, and what you have is a bit of a chimney experience where if an order comes in, the order is then basically going down the organization, and then the value chain is supposed to come back, the creation in a value-adding sense. However, because of the silos, what happens is when some request comes into a silo, first you have a movement up, and then a dispatching down of orders of what needs to be done, and then you move on to the next silo. So it's very clear in such a situation. It's bad for the service creation. The service ends up being too expensive. It's late, and the quality is wrong. What really needs to happen is that we move to an organization which sort of is depicted on the right-hand side. Essentially, you get rid of the silos. You cut out the command and control pyramid on top of the silos. And what you have is a very lean and agile and flexible organization that consists of a set of value chains that really flow and create value on time as the customer wants it. It's fast and it's cost effective, so you can make a margin. And on top is maybe a CEO with assistants, and they monitor the context of the organization, and then basically check which services need to be modified, which need to be maybe eliminated, which services need to be introduced. So these value chains you can of course run in a nicely automated fashion, meaningfully automated fashion with means of service-oriented cloud computing. So I understand that the picture at the top right presents quite a big challenge to established industry, which finds itself more in an organizational position like depicted on the left top side. But once you have made this transition where you liberate your value chains, it's then of course possible that you externalize, offer your services as provisions within open cloud ecosystems. And if you have such open cloud ecosystems to set up, run, orderly rollback and orderly terminate across enterprise collaboration, a very essential ingredient there is what I term a rendezvous hub, but you could say it's actually an engagement, an engagement service, because there's of course an enormous communication overhead if potential service consumers and potential service providers need to knock in a way on each other's door all the time to figure out who has something on offer. And here really this rendezvous hub is part of a bigger breeding ecosystem where you could allow for service innovation, perform service engineering. The rendezvous hub could then govern the setup and follow essentially the entire collaboration that goes on between service consumers and providers, and collect experience logs that could then in a feedback fashion be used to see things like how trustworthy and reputable your potential collaboration counterpart is, how good the quality of a service is, whom you're actually dealing with, what the collaboration history is. And this can, of course, then all be rolled out in clouds. And we have here at the bottom left the typical stacks and so things as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. But these are more the technical stacks. And my thesis is this is not the big issue. So the big issue that we really need to look at are the kind of the top stacks that deal with business semantics. And yeah, and this is really what we should deal with quite a bit at this SIEQ.
So,
yeah.
Thank you very much for this very exciting topic. So it's about service co-creation beyond the boundaries of the company, of the firm. And it's about service bundling, service networks, service ecosystems. So very exciting topic. And one very important building block is still missing, and it's IT, it's software, because we are talking about IT-enabled services. And we have to talk about software and software engineering and IT. And it's my pleasure to welcome Srinivas, Head of the Software Engineering Research at Infosys.
Hi, I'd like to ask a question. Can you raise your hands? How many of you believe Microsoft Office is a product? You use it as a product, right? Okay, good. Now, suppose I tell you that via Office 365, which is a site on the internet, you can go and rent a Microsoft Word at 5 cents an hour. Is that a product anymore? It's a service. So, my fundamental point at this juncture of this conference is that service is so important today that it's going to be the only thing people are going to talk about today, tomorrow, and for years to come. So, it's important that we pay attention to how we build services, that's service engineering. Rama has explained about service quality, and others have explained about the need for bringing customization, the user centricity, the customer centricity to how you design your services. So today, let me put one simple, example to real life, interesting service examples which we can borrow from in the real world. How many of you have seen Lego World? Or at least have seen malls where there are these millions of Lego pieces lying there, and they leave it to the kids out there to build and imagine systems they need to build. And you see the outcomes. It's amazing. Some of them builds a robot, some of them builds a building like Empire State Building. But imagine what's happening there. What's happening there is exactly what I'm talking about, modern day reuse. And reuse is the fundamental notion because of which today we have innovations in form of iPad apps, or we have innovations in form of collaborations between multiple enterprises, even to the level of, he was talking about business process as services extending across multiple enterprises. It's only possible because there are reusable elements from one enterprise being made accessible to the other enterprise. Now, I will give you one sad point of how we have done reuse in the past. The model is like the ice sculpting contest that happens, in the northern parts of US and Canada. Have you ever seen an ice sculpting contest? Yeah? I'm sure it happens in Finland too, right? It's like you got given this big blocks of ice, you're given this hacksaw. Now you take this big hacksaw and now chisel out your creative outcome from this big block. That's also a way to creativity. That's also a way to getting innovation. But what's the difference between the older model of ice sculpting based creation and this model of Lego based creation? The limitation here is if I want to make the Lego based model as tall as I can, I'm not constrained by the block of ice. I'm not constrained by the boundary of the blocks. Or there are similar limitations when it comes to the width of the type of structure I can create. So within these kind of limitations, you have to work with what you're going to chisel out. So the ultimate idea here is you chisel out from a large piece of monolithic chunk given to you and get your customized version what you want. That has been the tendency of how the so-called business solutions were created yesteryear by the big vendors. They used to throw this big chunk of software at you and give you levers to chuck it away in terms of the customization or configuration. But that led to the problem that you had to get software or solutions defined by these big guys, and guess what? You had to change your process. You had to change your process to suit the way your SAP or the Oracle implementation will dictate you to do. That was the sad part. But now, today, we are living in the world of cloud. We're living in the world of what's called mashups. We're living in the world of innovation via composing and innovating, and in race words, adopting. Race message all through the slides. If you take the top right corner of the top two layers, it was all about composite applications. It was about creating an environment for the end user to innovate, the self-service for the creators to create solutions which are customer-centric. So that is why it's important for us to understand that reuse in the form that is being promoted today via what we call as standardized APIs. How many of you know the legal dispute between Google and Oracle? You heard that? It was all about API, application programming interface. So what I'm saying is reuse via API basically dictates that today's service engineering is predicated upon the idea of leaving the innovation element to the end user and letting him create services and solutions which are user-centric, which are consumer-centric, which are amenable for collaboration, or which are amenable for customization, etc., based out of the building blocks which are services available to you. And that is key to how tomorrow service-oriented cloud, as you mentioned, right, is going to be the formation of, like Ray was mentioning about vertical clouds, how they will be constructed. It is no longer, in fact, that's the reason why we have to bring upon a change in the way we start teaching computer science and programming to kids. The way we should teach them is give them Lego blocks of software and let them innovate and come up with interesting solutions, interesting business functions, interesting, unimaginable combinations of these components to be able to deliver the innovation that's required. So that's why what I believe is the future is all about programs being replaced by the notion of adaptable, composable, or what we call as dynamically configurable applications. It's no longer programming tons and tons of Java code. It's about bringing a new service up and running as fast as possible with a flexibility of a good UI with a composition editor given to end user, where end user will create the UI the way he wants. He'll not be worried about how he does the order processing at the back end. But, you know, believe me, take any CRM function today, none of them are iPad friendly. But imagine that you are able to create an iPad layer over all these morose front ends of the, CRM functions out there. That's what I think I bring together all the points which people have told about, which is about bringing market-centric, customer-centric thinking, self-service, user interface-centric. All these innovations can happen if the engineering underlying is converted to the notion of assembling building blocks available to you. To that extent, some elements are required. What are those? We need to be able to bring business workflows in form of verticalized templates. Or we could bring in terms of standard business assets in form of prefabricated assets. These are important, without which you cannot give innovation at the user interface layer. It will be like, a lipstick, but there's no pig inside. So that's going to be the key element. The other element which is important is we have to be able to deploy these in diverse scenarios. As we have seen in tremendous number of applications across healthcare, across mobility, across big data. We need to be able to deliver the application in a thick client scenario, in a big iPad scenario, or it could be even a disconnected scenario on a very thin mobile phone in poor countries, for example. So it's important that you need to understand the need for context-aware applications so that you can contextualize the core and customize it for the specific implementation. So what does that mean? That means that you have to be able to take a core, what is given to you out of the box, but be able to customize it for the variation you are going to deliver to. The variation could be at different levels. It could be at a channel level. It could be like take a core data element and you could need to deliver it in form of an SMS-based push delivery to a customer, or it could be in form of an iPod app at the front end, or it could be in form of a classical desktop UI at the front end, or it could be in form of a B2B Rosetta Net wired message, very cryptic message being sent in XML format to your partner in a collaboration scenario. So the idea is you need to understand that variation engineering of an existing asset for engineering the variation that is required for change at the UI level or change at the self-service level when you need to vary it for the particular use case, or you need to vary it for the particular what you call channel, which is SMS, or which is about their different mobile phone. So important thing is to understand that though we're talking about customization at the front end for the solution or the customer end, we need to make it based on some core assets lying at the back end, but be able to vary it. Now there's another element. How do you define what are those key elements you're going to provide as key components or key reusable assets? That's where I think we need to do a thorough analysis of what are the typical vertical scenarios which you're going to target. What are the typical business scenarios you're going to talk about? Say in collaboration, you look at the particular value chain, look at the collaboration scenarios, look at what are those key elements which are being exchanged. Those become your canonical business entities. Similarly, what are those business activities you're performing with your collaborators? Those become your canonical business activities. So it is important that we do a thorough analysis of the use cases of where your end system is going to be potentially deployed. Of course, variation is the last mile, but before that you have to understand on what basic components are going to vary. So what my submission here is, service engineering for the future is going to be based on the principle that I will not implement the whole software end-to-end myself, but will use what is available from the ecosystem and integrate, whether it is in form of delivering a solution for a end customer scenario on an iPad, or whether it is for delivering for a partner for a collaboration scenario, or it is letting an end user derive his own mashup, write his own mashup by combining multiple interesting mashup components out there. So my submission here is service engineering of the future is about assembly and composite application, which is going to be very crucial. So even the dimensions of quality now will be about, instead of looking at a single program quality, it's going to be about how the composition of quality elements from individual components are going to drive the composite quality. That's a big, huge issue, and it's a huge research issue. So that's where I stop here. Thank you.